He is a controversial figure. I think the football argument for bringing him back is very straightforward. Like, you see the season he's had at Real Madrid. It's a tournament situation. They could play up to 7 games between injury, suspension, COVID issues. There's no real argument against not bringing him if he's available and fit and willing to travel. The issues which we can't really measure from this distance, which I think is the important bit, it's what impact it's going to have on the squad. Like you mentioned there, the reasons he's been absent for many years. He's alleged to be involved in a plot to blackmail a former teammate. Are some of the France squad currently still friends with that former teammate? Do they have loyalties there? Will it challenge them to be welcoming Benzema in? Giroud, I think, might have an issue with him. A comment Benzema made in the last year when he was asked about Giroud, and he compared the two of them to say, well, you know, you don't confuse a Formula 1 car with a karting. So that's a pretty public criticism.
Is he wrong, though?
well, it's not so much whether you're wrong, whether you think he's reflecting the difference in quality between them. It's what does Giroud think? So we're asking questions which we can't answer from the studio here, but internally these are issues which Deschamps is going to have to keep on top of.
Didi, what do you think of the decision to bring him back?
I think he's taking a bit of a risk because they have a very good squad. I think they would have had a very good squad, or the best squad in the tournament without Benzema. And they're World Cup winners without Benzema. We probably come to Germany in a minute. You know, there were 2 players who were brought back who, it was public pressure. It was, probably a bit of desperation as well. I think in France's case, I'm sure he would have spoken to 2, 3, 4 senior players. What do you think? And I'm sure they said to him, we want to win the European Championships. We've got a better chance with him. You know, it won't upset the dressing room. Bring him back. I can't see him bringing Benzema back after all those years, after having successful years as well, under the manager, to bring him back without consulting the squad.
Well, Deschamps says, you know, bringing him back is worth the risk.
I think it is. Because I would assume, like as Didi said there, the manager would have spoken to some of the players, and he would have known in advance if this is going to be a massive issue, to what extent it's going to be an issue, or how things are going to unfold. Obviously, he can't answer for certain, but I'd bring him back. I don't think there's a strong enough case to say that just because they did well in the tournament 3 years ago, that there's no reason to bring Real Madrid's top striker, one of the form strikers in the Champions League and La Liga this season. So I'd bring him back. He's going to be the focal point if things don't go well. But which isn't necessarily mean that he's the reason that things haven't gone well, but that's what the public and the media are going to focus on. If they don't do well, we'll point to Benzema and say, actually, Deschamps got this all wrong. But it's not the only issue.
You know, for sure. Well, Mbappe and Giroud had a bit of a spat the other day. Now, I believe in France they're not making a huge issue out of this, but it did seem strange. And, you know, the comments that he wasn't being given the ball enough, like, why did they find their way into the media? How?
Yeah, I think why I'm looking in on that as potentially an issue is because, remember, these lads are all in a bubble together. And we all know from experience, if you don't get on well with the people you're in a bubble with, doesn't matter how big the bubble is, it's going to be an issue. Tensions very, very quickly can come to the surface. So Giroud, you're right, said something after the game against Bulgaria last week, which was perceived by Mbappe as a criticism of his performance. Apparently Mbappe had to be talked down from demanding he have a press conference the following day to give his side of it. So I'd understand why the French media or the French players or anyone connected with the squad are doing their best to quash this. But there was definitely an issue last week, because you don't demand to have a press conference. It doesn't take a manager to have to slap you down to tell you you're not speaking publicly if there wasn't an issue there. And Mbappe did speak on Sunday and said, yeah, I was affected by it, but we've moved on. So
just a bit of caution on that note what Richie just said with the bubble. You know, when you play in a tournament, you go to press conferences, you do the press conference, there's 30, 40, 50, 60 journalists there. On the way in, on the way out, you have a word with one of them. The ones who write for your local or for your team you play in the Premier League or the Bundesliga, you have a quick word with them. That's not possible now. You know, so most questions are asked over via Zoom or whatever online. So there's no interaction. So I think the journalists as well, they're gagging for stories, because they haven't got none. Because sometimes when you walk in or walk out, you say something to a journalist and they do a bit of digging and maybe there's a story in it. They haven't got this. So they've got to get their information, everything they've got, purely on what's been said in the press conference.
So are we overreacting to this?
It's a legitimate story, because it's the players' quotes which we're going on. This isn't like an elaborate attempt by some of us to read body language or to to rely on like sources connected to players. There's none of that nonsense. Giroud said what he said. Mbappe said what he said publicly, and they've both, Mbappe particularly, acknowledged that he was impacted by it. So, and the backdrop of this, of course, is a manager who, for years and years, has made it no secret that squad cohesion and harmony
and the unity
is a cornerstone of how he wants to approach managing this France team, which makes it even more interesting that he's brought in Benzema, and even more interesting that these two lads have decided to let whatever difference there is between them make it into the public.